Last time we saw what should have been a Korean victory, but ended up being a terrible defeat and gave its name to this conflict, the Imjin War. Now we head to Pyongyang, where the Korean king and his officials will have to make some hard choices. I'm Stefan, and this is Japan at War. July 10th, Pyongyang. The Korean King Seonjo calls his officials to a meeting. With the Japanese now headed towards the city, they had to make a decision: run again or fight. Minister of Personnel Yi Won-ik began the meeting by expressing the popular idea that Pyongyang should be defended to the last man. Minister of War Yi Hong-bak said that if this really was going to be the plan, then they needed to come up with a battle strategy right now and not wait till the last minute like at Seoul and just leave. King Seonjo, who had actually been silent up until now, said that he felt like staying in Pyongyang was just too dangerous for him. And two different plans were then presented for the king's evacuation. One was to have him go to the town of Yongbyon, which would have been closer to China, and the other one was Ganggi, in the far northeast. The king said that he had heard of the terrain around Ganggi was easy to defend. Chung Shao, the Western faction leader that had just been called back from exile, said that he had actually just been there and the ground was infertile and didn't have the ability to feed soldiers if stationed there. Minister of the Left, Yoon Soo agreed and added that the area was also too remote for the king to give effective commands. Isn't it nice to see two political parties agree finally? The king relented and agreed he couldn't go there, which meant that Yongbyon was the only real choice. It was also decided that the Crown Prince Gwanghai should go to Ganggi, or someplace near there, just in case the king was ever caught. This was also a political move to make sure that the royal family's presence was felt amongst the people. After all, there was still a real risk of some of the disaffected citizens, that they would side with the Japanese. The royal family didn't stay in the city long after that. On July 16th, Konishi Yukinaga and his men arrived at the south bank of the Taedong River, directly inside of Pyongyang's walls, and set up camp. A few days later, he was joined by Kuroda Nagamasa and his men, who was quite confident after a very successful sweep of the Hwanghae province. The Koreans had made a tactical decision to get rid of all the boats along the river. And with no real way to cross, the Japanese did just as they had done at the Imjin: set up camp and wait. The knowledge of the Japanese army camped near the city had Pyongyang's citizens in a massive panic. Government officials tried to quell the panic for fear that many of the citizens would leave the city, and they badly needed everyone to defend it. The officials tried to downplay the situation, saying that there was thousands and thousands of soldiers to defend the walls, and plenty enough weapons for everyone, and food to last many months. Pyongyang they told him, was much stronger than Seoul had been. Most of the people, though, wouldn't listen, and it's really hard to blame them. That same day, King Seonjo and his officials started to leave. The queen was sent to Hamhung, where it was hoped she would be safe and able to spread the royal family's presence. And then the tablet guard, who were in charge of, defending the ancestral tablets, left. The citizen of Pyongyang, seeing the tablets leave, knew that meant one thing: the king was also leaving. An angry mob armed with clubs blocked the guard's way. The people yelled, "How can you just ask us to give our lives away defending the city, and yet you abandon us?" Yu Song-yong of the Eastern Party is said to have scolded the crowd, telling them that they were being disrespectful to the king. The guards then started to push the people away, and any chance that the people would actually stay and resist the invaders had disappeared, much like the king would soon also. The same day that Konishi and Soyoshitoshi had arrived at the Taedong River, they tried once more to contact the Korean government. A message was sent across the river asking to speak with Yi Dakyong. The meeting took place early in the morning, July 17th, in the middle of the river, with Yi Dakyong in one boat and Yanagawa Shigenobu and the monk Genso as Konishi's representatives, both of which, if you remember, had actually been a part of the pre-war missions to Korea. Yi started by asking what they wanted from this meeting. Genso stated that there had been several attempts to have negotiations, and that so far they had only met armed resistance. But their goal was to have Korea stand down, cease the bloodshed, and open the way into China. And I would like to note that there are several sources out there saying that Genso next said that he tried lying to Yi Dakyong that they only wanted to force relations with China. But this actually makes no sense, as they had stated the intention to invade several times before. Anyways, the talks didn't lead to anything, as letting the Japanese attack China was beyond anything that Korea's government would even think of letting happen, and told the monk to have the armies retreat back. Genso responded by yelling him, "The Japanese armies only advance, not retreat." And that was the end of the discussion. In an attempt to have the Koreans make a mistake, the Japanese made a wide raft and had gunners fire at the walls of Pyongyang from the middle of the river. They had hoped that this would scare them into abandoning their positions. It didn't, but it did make the king hurry with his evacuation. And by July 19th, he and his officials had slipped out of the city and was on the move to Yongbyon. And this is where we will leave off. Before you go, I would like to have somewhat of a theoretical discussion with you, the audience. What do you think the king should have done? Because his intentions were definitely to keep his people together and have them resist the invaders. Is the reason that he spread his family out. But at the same time, he has had this habit of leaving provinces and cities, telling them to put their lives on the line. And in a lot of ways, it can be seen as cowardly to just run away, well, as he's been doing. But him staying behind probably would have meant his death. So tell me your thoughts on what you think he should have done and what you would have done differently. Or would you have done the same? And what about the Battle of the Imjin River? While the commander Kim Young-won had made some pretty bad mistakes in the past, it was really the government that botches Kim's ability to lead. And I can't think of a way that he could have decisively won that battle. But we'll talk more about Commander-in-Chief Kim Young-won in the next episode. The siege is just starting. See you next time.